Okay, so today I begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. I also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So welcome everyone, and today our webinar will be on wills and charitable giving. So my name is May Sivashambu. I will be the host for today's webinar, and I'm joined today by my two lovely colleagues, Michael and Daniil, and I will let them introduce themselves. So Michael, did you want to start?
Yes, thank you, May, and welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us here this afternoon. My name is Michael Rigoletto, and I'm the philanthropy manager. I work in the charitable giving team. I'm the front-facing part of charitable giving and philanthropy at State Trustees. My role is to run the various grant programs. I'll work and interact with charitable organisations, and in some cases individuals that want to have a chat about our grant programs and how they apply and how they might fit with the purposes. And I work very closely with our team on some of the internal bits and pieces, but I'm kind of the front guy, if you like. So, and I'm again delighted to be here, and thanks for joining us. And I'll hand over to my lovely teammate in Daniil.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Daniil, and I've been working at State Trustees for over 20 years now, with 15 years in the charitable giving space. And I help people considering giving to charity to explore different options that there are for giving and to find the right one for them. I also work with charities to establish efficient and reliable processes for providing income every year to them with charitable distributions, and I implement governance structures to hold these charities accountable for the money that we do distribute to them. And thanks for having me here today.
Amazing, thanks Daniil.
And a shout out to Angela, our colleague, who's very quietly sitting in the background, but we couldn't do it without Angela. So shout out.
Excellent. So for those of you that aren't familiar with State Trustees, the State Trustees is a government-backed organisation. So we provide comprehensive legal and financial services to all Victorians. So since 1940, we've written over 250,000 wills and administer more deceased estates than any other company in Victoria. So with today's webinar, it will be broken down into two parts. So in the first part of the webinar, we'll talk about why updating your will matters, how State Trustees can help you give and to understand your charitable giving intentions, and also a bit about the State Trustees Australia Foundation. In the second part, we'll answer some common questions that you do pop in the chat to help you understand how State Trustees can assist you. So if we don't cover any of your questions, you can always contact us. And if you do have any personal questions, you can send us a message after the webinar via the Contact Us form, and we'll get back to you. All right, so let's get started. So we're going to start off by talking a bit about why it's important to keep your will updated and when you should consider updating your will. So for the first part, put simply, your will is intended to portray your wishes as to how your assets to be distributed once you pass away. So it is really important that you do keep it up to date as your circumstances change. And this also does prevent any potential disputes that might arise amongst your beneficiaries once you pass. And when you would consider updating your will, there would be a range of reasons, but the main ones that you can focus on are things like changes in life, family, and even laws. So some examples of this could be if you get married or divorced, or if there's any births or deaths in the family. And similarly, if there's any significant financial changes or shifts in family dynamics as well. So if these circumstances do occur, you can have a look at your will just to make sure that the assets that you have allocated within the will to your beneficiaries are still according to your wishes, and they do reflect the changes that are happening in your life as well. And when it comes to any new laws and regulations, especially relating to inheritance and taxation, it's important that you do, again, revisit your will and speak to your will writer just to make sure that the changes are reflected in the will as well. Now, outside any changes within your family and also even friends, there is also the option, if you do have any causes or groups or organizations in society that are important to you, you can make provisions within your will to and this can be done in the form of a legacy statement, which is also known as a bequest. And if you do have that within your will, and we will touch on this more in the webinar, if you do have that in your will, it is just as important as the other examples that I provided, to have a look at it when circumstances change and just make sure that it does still reflect on your priorities and make any adjustments accordingly as well. And on that note, Michael and Daniil, what experience does State Trustees have in charitable giving?
Well, firstly, as one of the biggest will writers in Victoria, State Trustees has vast experience in helping people write effective wills. What many people don't realise is that State Trustees, in various guises, has been administering charitable estates since the mid-1800s. Over the years, as more people started to leave gifts to charities, we responded to that need by creating structures to make charitable giving easier for people. So that has evolved over time. The State Trustees Australia Foundation is one of those ways to help support people through their wills, support charitable works. Today, State Trustees and the Foundation distribute about $5 million a year to the community and the charitable sector, either through direct payments to charities according to donors' wishes or through granting programs. All of this giving comes directly from the generosity of people who've included charitable giving as part of their wills. We've got a dedicated charitable giving team. You've met myself and Daniil, and shout out again to Angela. And our job is to help people understand and facilitate effective charitable giving. Broadly speaking, our work comes under 5 key themes. We work with our will writers, lawyers, and other specialists to help give effectively through their wills. We manage and administer the funds for donors according to their wishes and the regulatory requirements that Daniil alluded to a moment ago. We distribute charitable gifts either through annual payments directly to charities, again, according to donors' wishes, or through a variety of grant programs that are public faces where organisations apply for funding. We engage the not-for-profit community and organisations to understand the opportunities for people to give. So we live in non-profit land as well, to get an insight into what are the good things that are out there to support. And above all, what we're trying to do overall by putting all these things together is to encourage more people to consider charitable giving and to do it well.
Fantastic, thank you. And in the context of wills, what does charitable giving mean, and why is it something that people should consider?
Well, by definition, charitable giving is simply the act of donating money or property, and you can do that in many ways. In the context of today's conversation, it's about making provision in your will for a cause you care about, typically a charity, but not always. Doing this effectively requires careful consideration and expertise to make sure that your will is written in such a way so that it achieves your wishes or charitable intent, as we say. Why would you want to give through your will? Well, I think you might leave something to charity for similar reasons you'd consider leaving something to anyone in your will. It might be that you love them and want to help secure their future. You appreciate their work and the contribution they make to others in the world. Or you might want to just thank and acknowledge them for something that they've done to help you or those precious to you. It comes back to having a genuine appreciation of what the charitable and not-for-profit sector does for us. And of course, that's the key point, isn't it? If you don't value the sector, then you're not going to support it. Finally, never underestimate the joy that can come from the act of giving. It sounds very, flaky, but it's a very real thing. Helping to secure the future of a person or a cause you love is an extraordinary thing. And I can recall many occasions where people have expressed the immense pleasure and satisfaction that they derive from giving. In a former life, I've worked very closely with major donors who in the course of establishing an initiative, they were very focused on the thing that they were trying to achieve. And at some point they put their heads up and said, this actually feels great. Not just the thing that we're building, but just the act of doing something charitable feels great. Similarly, we witness the satisfaction of people when they write a will and establish a lasting legacy for the future. It's a great feeling. And on that last point, Daniil and I were having this conversation the other day where descendants of people who generations ago created a trust or some form of a giving structure, and their ancestors come along and say, what was that about? Why was that thing created? So they actually go back and start trying to work out what connection did that ancestor have with that area. And and that's an amazing thing to think generations later. So the act of writing a will and including charitable intent is very much a way of keeping your spirit alive. So it's a very real thing.
Amazing, thank you. There's a lot to consider there. And you did mention the not-for-profit sector. So why is that important, and why should individuals be expected to support it? Isn't that the role of the government?
Oh, yeah, there's so much in that question, and I could talk for hours on this. I think the first thing to appreciate is the vital role that the sector plays in Australian life. Purely in terms of economic contribution, the not-for-profit sector represents about 10% of the economy. And for reference, the mining industry is just over 10%. So the not-for-profit sector is a big part of what we do. In terms of services, many key services that we see as vital are delivered by not-for-profits, as are many of the vital extras that make life not just possible, but rich and wonderful. Summer's coming, we're all thinking about going to the beach. If we get into trouble, we expect a surf lifesaver to help us. Well, that organisation relies very heavily on philanthropy. Furthermore, not-for-profits can often respond more quickly than government, and they're typically more deeply connected to the communities they serve. That's the point. The sector is very much a partner to government and the private sector, which is why it's sometimes and often referred to now as the third sector. That the sector is vital to making sure that the services delivered to us are relevant and effective. It's also important to understand that government often looks to philanthropy and the not-for-profit sector working together to help inform its policy making. They'll often test pilot projects. They'll look to draw on evidence and data about how some of the programs that they're running are working and whether they're worth scaling up. To your question about isn't it the government's job to fund the sector? I'd answer by saying, yes, it absolutely is, and it does. In broad terms, government funding represents about 40% of the not-for-profit sector's income. The rest, that is most, comes from charitable giving and any revenue-generating services that not-for-profits might provide. That highlights the fact that the not-for-profit sector's work is very much a partnership with government. And given the increasing calls on government, it's unrealistic to expect that it will have the capacity to keep filling that gap. And if we were to reduce the pool of charitable giving by a third, which is where we're headed, the not-for-profit sector won't be able to provide the services that as a community we've come to cherish and expect. So this is going to lead to greater suffering and inequity in our society.
So based on what you've just said, am I correct in understanding that you're saying that giving is declining?
Yes, as a proportion of GDP in Australia, it's actually quite low and is continuing to decline. We're 20% lower than the UK and only a third of the level in the US. Similarly, Australia's bequests and individual giving rates are also below those of our peers. And this decline has been in play for many years. It's not just a COVID thing. And while we need to take care in making comparisons, I've thrown some other countries in there, we need to take care in making comparisons with other countries because there are varying political, economic, and social factors at play. But there is no doubt that there is room and seriously a need for greater philanthropic giving in Australia.
So what can we do about it?
Well, firstly, it's about identifying the problem. And I personally don't think that the decline is simply because Australians are becoming less generous. I think the reasons are far more nuanced than that. There are things that we can do in the sector to better present ourselves to our community. and prospective donors, we all have a role to play in more effectively conveying the not-for-profit sector's value. And I'm talking about those working in charities, grant makers, advisors, and of course individual donors themselves to share the benefit of what they're doing. There is one big thing that we can do, which is the topic of today's webinar, that we have a unique opportunity in Australian history to make a profound impact on the not-for-profit sector. We're about, in Australia, as in much of the Western world, we're about to experience unprecedented growth in intergenerational transfer of wealth. In the next couple of decades, $2.6 trillion in Australia will be passed to the next generation. And over $1 trillion of that will be by 2030, which is the next 6 or 7 years. This is going to give us an extraordinary opportunity to transform the not-for-profit sector. And that's not just about giving more, it's about giving insightfully. We've got to think carefully about if we're going to give, how much we're going to give, where we're going to give, and how we're going to give. Philanthropy Australia, which is the peak body for philanthropy in Australia, has developed a blueprint to grow structured giving in Australia, which addresses these very points. The blueprint is currently being further developed by the Productivity Commission, and that will be submitted to the federal government in the middle of next year. The government has already indicated that it is supportive of the initiative, and those of us in the will writing, grant making, philanthropy sector are enormously encouraged to see that this is being discussed at the highest levels in government. It's an excellent initiative, and Philanthropy Australia needs to be applauded for taking this on. Some of the things that are under consideration, doesn't mean they're going to happen, but these are the things that are under consideration. Tax breaks for bequests through superannuation, possibly a national giving campaign, which would be a really exciting thing to see, and new governance arrangements to foster government civil sector collaboration, which is the thing that I was talking about before about government and not-for-profit sector working together. So watch this space. Giving in wills is going to be an increasingly important topic. And one final point, it's important to appreciate that charitable giving, also known as philanthropy, is not just for the rich. I think the term philanthropy can be a little bit alienating for people. We don't have to give away millions or leave all our assets to charity. Philanthropy is not about millionaires giving millions. Philanthropy Australia's objective is to have 0.45% of that wealth transferred go to structured giving by 2030. So that's less than 0.5% for us all to consider in our wills. So it's not just something for the rich, and we're not saying to people, you know, write your family out of your will and give it all to charity. We're talking about just have the conversation, make a provision there, because if we all do a little, we're going to have a transformational impact on the sector and for Australian society. So it's a really important conversation to have.
Amazing. Thanks, Michael. There's so much happening in this space. So how can people leave money to charity in their wills? Danielle, did you want to answer this one?
Thanks, May. Well, there's two main ways you can leave money to charity in your will. The first is with a direct gift, which is probably the one that people know the most. So if you want to leave a direct gift to charity in your will, you simply name the charity you want to receive the gift. You choose a specific dollar amount or a percentage of your estate. And when your estate's finalised, that gift will be paid directly to the charity that you name, and it'll be paid by your executor, and that's it. The second way you can leave money to charity in your will is through a perpetual charitable trust, which allows you to support your chosen charity year after year forever. To do this, you still name the charity or charities you want to support, and you still choose the dollar amount or the percentage of your estate to gift. But this way, when your estate is finalised, your gift is held on trust, and a share of this is paid to your chosen charities every year.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And how can State Trustees help me do that?
At State Trustees, we have a public charitable trust that you can give to in your will that allows you to give in perpetuity without actually establishing your own charitable trust. It's called the State Trustees Australia Foundation. It was established back in 1994 to make it easy for people to give in perpetuity to their favourite charities. That's exactly why it was set up. Right now it has about 200 sub-funds or gifts that have been left by everyday people who wanted to make a difference to their community. And our role in the charitable team is to facilitate each of the wishes of those 200 plus sub-funds by making payments of at least 4% of those assets to named charities every year. Another option when leaving a gift to a charitable trust like the State Trustees Australia Foundation is being able to choose a charitable cause area or a charitable purpose, if you like, instead of naming a particular charity. And choosing a charitable purpose like animal welfare or medical research can have a number of benefits. One benefit is that our charitable team, led by Mike, who's actually our philanthropic grants specialist as well as our manager, we run grants programs to seek and compare projects from different organisations, and we can select the best projects or programs that meet the particular charitable purpose every year. Another benefit of choosing a charitable purpose is you can achieve a larger impact when your money is pooled with other donors' monies left for the same charitable purpose. For example, money left for helping disadvantaged children each year is pooled together from the many donor sub-funds that have left money for the same purpose, creating the opportunity to support larger projects with a greater impact. If anyone's interested in learning more about our State Trustees charitable granting programs and the projects that have been supported over the past few years, you can jump on the State Trustees website and in the search engine, just pop in grant programs and scroll through and have a look what we have.
Right. So there's a few options that you've talked about there. So why wouldn't someone just take the first option that you mentioned and give directly to a charity? Isn't that safer and a more efficient way?
There's definitely a place for giving directly to a charity through your will, and for some people this achieves their goals, and that's great. But there are many people who'd like to know that their support for their charities will continue forever and feel proud about the legacy they've decided to leave behind, which is what Mike was touching on, the feel-good legacy that you can leave. This option provides actually a long-term safety and security for the charities as well, and ultimately a much larger benefit than a once-off direct gift. This is what perpetual giving structures like the State Trustees Australia Foundation can achieve for you.
Okay, so I hear that perpetual giving can have a larger impact. So can you tell me how perpetual charitable trusts like the State Trustees Australia Foundation actually work?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, instead of a charitable gift in your will being paid directly to charity when your estate is administered, your gift is instead paid to a perpetual charitable trust. Let's just use State Trustees Australia Foundation as the example. Once your gift is paid by your executor to the foundation, it's invested in a managed investment fund specifically for charitable gifts, and it forms part of what's called the trust's corpus. Now, here's the important part. By investing your gift, it has the opportunity to grow in capital value. Now, as a public ancillary fund, our foundation's required to distribute a minimum of 4% of its value, or how much money it actually has, each and every year. So whilst your gift is supporting your chosen charities or charitable causes every year by paying them 4% of your gift's value, because your gift is growing in capital value, the average amount that's paid every year to your charities increases as well, to a point in time that if you add up all the previous year's payments, your charities will have received the same amount as your original gift, but they still have a lifetime of financial support to come. And because your original gift is still invested in the corpus, it's still continuing to grow.
Well, that's fantastic. So giving in perpetuity can have a larger impact than giving directly to charity.
Absolutely. I'll give an example too in real terms. Say you have a $100,000 gift that you've left in your will to the foundation. That $100,000 is invested by the foundation, and after the first year, 4% of that 100,000 or 4,000 is paid to your chosen charities. Then the following year, after another 12 months of investment, 4% is again paid to your chosen charities. This keeps going year after year until you come to a time when perhaps in 15 years, your gift will have paid to your chosen charities the value of your original gift, which, if you remember, was $100,000. Now, the reason why this is likely to take less than 25 years, which is how many 4,000s are in that $100,000, is because your gift is invested and it's growing over time. And on average, each year, that 4% share being paid to your charity is larger than the previous year. In fact, after this time, the value of your original gift is likely to have grown to around $150,000 or even $200,000, depending on market returns, and then could be paying your charity $6,000 to $8,000 per year. As this keeps going every year forever, you can see how giving in perpetuity has a larger and longer lasting impact for charities.
Amazing. So can you tell me, does receiving a smaller distribution each year when compared to the larger one-off gift benefit my charities?
Like I mentioned earlier, for many charities, knowing they have a reliable and consistent income stream being paid to them every year provides them with financial certainty, which in turn allows them to better budget, plan for, and estimate their service offering each and every year. And as I demonstrated just now, ultimately the charity receives more money in the long run.
Okay, that makes sense. So if I want to leave a gift to a charity in my will and then I decide to write my will with State Trustees, could you walk me through State Trustees service offering?
Certainly. State Trustees, as a public trustee of Victoria, has been serving the Victorian community for many, many years with different products and services. Our will writers help you write your will and powers of attorney you may have. Our charitable team helps determine how best to fulfill your charitable goals. Our estates team administer your estate when you pass away, including paying any direct gifts to charity that you may have left to charity. Our charitable team can establish your perpetual charitable gift and ensure your charitable wishes are fulfilled every year. And our investments team manage, among other things, the Charitable Common Fund, which is the managed investment fund I mentioned earlier, specifically for charitable gifts. So what State Trustees can provide you with is really a one-stop shop.
Awesome. So can you tell me a bit more about how the charitable team can help me determine my own charitable giving goals?
Of course. When talking with our clients about charitable giving, we apply a donor-centric approach. So we start by asking them to tell us what they hope to achieve with their charitable giving. And from there, we gain an understanding of how, what, when, and why they would like to give. The answers help us use our expertise to make suggestions, provide more information, and just generally help guide charitable giving goals. This might include discussing each charity they want to support, providing the correct legal name, confirmation of the current ABN, confirming charity registration status and ATO endorsements. These sound simple or boring, but they're very important, and they actually help the will writer when it comes time to writing the will. We also discuss things like whether naming a charity would benefit or including a charitable purpose after the name. For example, some charities work in different countries, and you may wish to ensure that the support was for a particular country. The example that comes to mind is World Vision Australia. World Vision Australia operates a fund in Australia, and it also operates an overseas aid fund. So if you specifically want to support to remain in Australia, or conversely, you want your money to be used overseas, you need to include this specific purpose in your will. We discuss the pros and cons of giving to charity directly or in perpetuity, or whether giving to a charitable cause would suit their goals better than naming specific charities and what that might look like. We also discuss the potential size of your gift and how you determine a reasonable number of charities to support. This one's important, as you want to make sure that the gift actually provides benefit to your charity and is not a burden. If I can use an exaggerated example to demonstrate my point, if you gifted $20,000 to the foundation, and we know from before the foundation distributes a minimum of 4%, which is $800, leaving this to 20 charities would dilute the gift considerably, reducing its effectiveness and impact. So instead of giving 20 charities $40, it's much more beneficial to reduce the number of charities to benefit one or two.
Amazing. So let's assume that I've written a charity into my will. What will State Trustees do to make sure that the charity will make good use of my gift?
If you give directly to charity as executor of your estate, State Trustees is responsible for ensuring your charity receives the gift from your estate in accordance with your will. And that's really where it ends. If you leave a perpetual charitable gift in your will, State Trustees as trustee can do more than that, as a relationship with the charity is ongoing. As part of administering your perpetual charitable gift, we provide regular communication to your charities every year, ensuring they're aware of any upcoming payments and reminding them of the charitable purposes the funds are to be used for. Some gifts written also require the charity to provide us with information before an annual payment is made, like evidence that the previous year's payment had been spent in full or in a specific way. We refer to this as a financial acquittal. In situations like this, we work more closely with the charities, providing guidance when necessary and encouraging collaboration to ensure that things run smoothly for us and for the charities. For donors that have named charitable cause areas, we stay on top of developments within the sectors and within the charitable sector as a whole, and use this when developing and planning for annual grant rounds and when reviewing and selecting new projects. This is what's known as best practice philanthropy, and it's an evolving discipline. We also act on your behalf if things don't go as planned, always ensuring your charitable intentions are at the forefront and working with the charities to honour these. An example that comes to mind here is when an aged care provider is named with a particular residential facility as the specific charitable purpose. This may have been of particular importance to the donor as they resided there during their lifetime and they felt they were looked after very well and they wanted to give back. As sometimes happens, aged care providers change, and that residential facility may not end up being managed by the aged care provider named in the will. In this case, because the charitable purpose was clearly for the residential facility, we'd ensure the support went to the new aged care provider that's taken over the management of that residential facility. As these gifts are in perpetuity, a lot can happen over many, many years, and it's our job to ensure that we keep abreast of change and we stay true to the donor's charitable wishes.
Excellent. And how do I get more information about giving to charity in my will?
When you book an appointment to write your will with State Trustees, you're offered the opportunity to speak with the charitable team prior to your will appointment. You can use the contact form on the website, which you mentioned before, and request someone from the charitable team to contact you. We're always happy to have a conversation with you about charitable giving. It's usually best to do that before your will appointment. This way you have information that you need to make informed decisions before you write your will. And with your approval, we can share the information we've recommended with your will writer so that they're informed prior to your will appointment as well. This in no means that you can't change your mind before you get to your will appointment or even after you've had that will appointment.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to the second part of the webinar, which will be questions that have come through by the chat. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them through. So this one is an open question, either Daniil or Michael, you can answer. So do you need a separate charitable trust or can a family trust meet this purpose?
Sounds like one for you, Daniil. Sorry to handball that one back to you.
I'm sorry.
Do you need a separate charitable trust or can a family trust meet purpose?
I'm a separate trust. Okay. Sorry. So they're very different. Family trusts and charitable trusts are very different. So yes, you need something different. The charitable team, as I said, when we speak to clients, we work out what their needs are and we'll write the right charitable trust structure or the right trust structure into the will. So that's quite a specific question. I'm sorry.
But you can have a family charitable trust.
Okay. So where the family will all do the charitable giving.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'm just speculating. I'm trying to read between the lines.
Sorry.
Obviously, you can set up a family trust for private business purposes, but in the context of charitable giving, I'm just feel free to jump in, Dossett M, and do a follow up.
Amazing. So if there's any more questions, you can keep them coming and we'll quickly just have a look if there's anything that's come through.
We've got another. Okay, so Dorset M, thanks for the clarification. They've said a use of a specific part of assets in a family trust for specific charitable purposes.
Look, I don't know much about family trusts. I don't think I can actually answer that. Maybe I need to take that offline. Maybe we can have a chat outside of the webinar and I get a better understanding of what it is you're asking. I'm sorry.
Okay, David has just followed up from within the State Trustees team, and he said you can make charitable donations from a family trust in most trust deeds, but that doesn't make the whole trust a charitable trust, so perpetuity is not available. But it sounds like quite a technical conversation that needs to be had. So Dorset M, feel free to reach out, and we'd be happy to provide any more context and information.
Thank you. Another question that's come through is, how much do I need to give?
I'll take that one. It's quite hard when you're giving through your will because you don't necessarily know how much money you're going to have when you actually pass away. Some people choose to leave a dollar amount like I suggested earlier, but when you give a percentage of your residuary estate, you don't know what that's going to end up as. I spoke about the State Trustees Australia Foundation, and we have a minimum of $10,000 for a sub-fund in that. There's another structure called a private charitable trust, which some people leave in their wills when they want to be more specific with their charitable giving. And we have a $50,000 minimum to administer private charitable trusts because they're administered separately and they're not part of that one trust like the State Trustees Australia Foundation is.
Amazing. And another question that's come through is, can I choose to remain anonymous?
Absolutely, you can, if that's what you would like to do. Where you're choosing to remain anonymous, we'll still do your charitable giving, we'll fulfill your charitable wishes, and it will be combined with other giving that's going for the same purposes or to the same charities. So yes, you can absolutely do that.
Perfect. And just check what else has come through. So what if a chosen charity, or as per the previous example of the retirement home, closes down?
Good question. So if it's through the foundation, the trustee actually has total discretion when there is a situation where it can't give to the named charity that's left in a will, to find the most closely aligned organisation that will fill the original intentions. So we will do our best then to find a similar residential facility or aged care that most nearly fulfills your charitable intentions.
And you can also explicitly state that in your will too, for that eventuality, if the institution ceases to exist or whatever. This is the extra. You can put whatever guidance you like in there.
Any other questions coming through?
There is a tax-related question in here, which is a broad one, not specific. If I have capital gains assets and I give them to a charity in the form of a gift or a charitable trust, and the gift is made in specie, is the capital gains tax avoided?
So I don't know that I can provide tax advice, but in general, if you're giving to the foundation or a public ancillary fund, it's actually a tax exempt entity. So it is able to receive assets, and if those assets have tax, like capital gains tax, and we do sell them within the foundation, that's correct. The foundation doesn't have to pay the capital gains tax. So where possible, if there are assets that have tax associated with them outside of the foundation, you can transfer them in and we'll sell them down there. and to receive no tax implications.
Great, thank you.
There's a general question about wills. How frequently can we access our will?
You can access it whenever you want, really. If there's not really specific reasons that we would ask when you need to access your will, but if you do need it for any specific purpose, you can always give us a call. So if, for example, you write your will with State Trustees, you do actually have the option to store it with us in the Victorian Will Bank, and it's a free service. This is also available if you don't write your will with us. So if at any time you do need it, you can give us a call, we can obtain it for you, and you can have it. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any more questions, so we can start wrapping up. So I do want to start by saying thank you to both Daniil and Michael for coming along, answering some questions that have come through to chat, and also providing your expertise during the first part of the session as well. If we didn't get to your question, do feel free to send us a message and Daniil will contact you very soon. You can also book an appointment with us online by the State Trustees website, statetrustees.com.au, or you can give us a call on our 1300 number, which is available on our website and also will be provided in the chat as well. And when you do book in your appointment, if you're not able to get to any of our offices, you do also have the option for a video appointment as well. For those of you that either didn't get the chance to watch the whole webinar or you'd like to re-watch it, we will be sending out the link to the webinar in the next couple of days. And if you do need any more information on giving in perpetuity or how to give, there is a contact us form that's been dropped into the chat as well. You can use that link, provide your details, and we'd love to hear from you. So once again, thank you everyone for coming along. I hope you have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.